Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 4 of the CMU Sport Management Podcast. If you have yet to listen to episode 3 with Jen Eaton, you can go check that out on YouTube and Spotify. And while you're at it, go give us a follow on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook. Please note that episode 4 was recorded virtually, so the audio might not sound as great as if it was done in person. With that being said, let's get into today's episode, a conversation with Justin Faur. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 4 of the CMU Sport Management Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Sandel, and today I am joined by the Director of Facilities and Event Operations with CMU Athletics, Justin Faur. How are you doing today, Justin?
Doing great, Kyle. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. We're middle of the week. We just got through our wellness days with class, so we're right back to school on a Wednesday. I want to get started quickly with just asking you, how is the sports season going so far? Obviously, we're in football season right now, but we have a lot of other sports going on: volleyball, field hockey, soccer. There's probably some more that I'm missing. So how has the season been so far?
Season's busy, but that's part of the job. I mean, there's really not much of a break necessarily, but it's good because everything kind of flows well, and when you have people in your department and people around you to help out, it's not so labor intensive. So obviously we got football, field hockey, soccer. We have fall ball for softball. Volleyball is obviously going. Basketball is starting to kick up. Wrestling is going to be here in the next half a month or 2 to 4 weeks or so. So I mean, everything's starting to kick back right into winter season. So get this quick break in as soon as the fall seasons are over. Take a quick breath, and then we're right back into it.
Yeah, the winter grind is for real from November to February, basically, in collegiate sports. So, obviously, I just mentioned that you work in CMU Athletics, but it all started in the sport management program here at CMU. So, I just want to ask, what was, back when you were a high school student before you entered the program, what was the main interest in going to college for sport management and CMU specifically?
So, to be honest, I am not a traditional student at all. After high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do originally. I wanted to be a history teacher. So I didn't know what I wanted to do because I had the chance to be a collegiate athlete. I was a really good cross country and track runner, but didn't know how to navigate the NCAA clearinghouse. There was some administrative leaves from my high school. My parents had never gone to college, so took a couple years off. And I went to Specs Howard School of Media Arts in Southfield, which now they're part of Lawrence Tech. Wanted to get into broadcasting originally, and then I transferred up here to CMU. I knew they had a really good program, and once I got here, I was told none of my credits transferred after being told countless times. So I took that upon myself as okay, hey, we'll restart, and then I'll pick up a minor in sport management. And after about a year or so, I just loved sport management a lot more than I did broadcasting. So I ended up dropping that and just grabbed my minor in athletic coaching and just grinded through the program and enjoyed every bit of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that's terrible that your credits didn't transfer. I mean, that's just that. Yeah, I was a transfer student as well, and I went to Mid-Michigan College before coming to CMU. So my credits transferred. So, but I know how struggle that is. So. So when you were in the sport management program, what was your favorite part about being a student in the program?
I think it was really just the friends I made, and even with some of the professors, I got really close with Dr. B, Nick Williams, Dr. Ulrich, Adler. I mean, I got close with everybody. I, really just indulged myself and made sure that they knew who I was, and I wanted to make sure I knew who they were. I went to them with questions. I would email them. And then with the friends I've made through the entire course of, the sport management program, a lot of my friends now some of them aren't doing sports anymore, but they're out doing big things that they probably wouldn't have gotten without some kind of connection through sport. A lot of them work for the Tigers, the Red Wings. I have a buddy who's at Alabama. I have one that's at Louisville. I have other friends across the country because of this program. And some of the tools that it allowed me to get and the opportunities it afforded me.
Yeah, so when you were working, or when you were a student at CMU, I assume you started working in the athletics program as a college student. So what were some experiences that you gained through that process, or anywhere else that you could have gotten experience at?
Yeah, I got lucky. One of my buddies actually worked in facilities at the time, so I told him I just wanted a job. I didn't care what it was. and luckily there was a spot available. So I got into facilities right away, and just really learned a lot from my boss at the time, Orville Jennings, who's now at Arizona. And, for somebody who's never been in athletics up to that point, outside of working for the Kalamazoo Growlers for a summer, I've never done college athletics, so I didn't know what to expect. And my first day on the job, we were doing an arena flip here in McGurk, and I see my boss, who, I only knew his face because I looked up on the staff directory. He's, pulling down hoops, and he's doing all this with him and another student, and he's sweating and grinding. And to me, that was such a light bulb, because I'm like, this guy is, high up, like he's an executive staff. Like,
Right.
Most people don't do that. And so that kind of just gave me, the light bulb of, hey, it doesn't matter who you are, what you do. Like, you can grind with your students and your coworkers and show them, like, hey, I won't give you anything I can't do. But in doing so with facilities and doing all that, we were hosting MAC wrestling. I think that year or the year after, we did volleyball. One of the first couple of years I was here, and then while I was in grad school, I believe in 20 or 21, we hosted indoor track as well. So I got lucky to, we've been able to host a couple MAC tournaments and do some stuff like that. And again, it really was lucky. I almost feel like right time, right place type of deal, and the right people around me to help, elevate me to do certain things and to kind of break out of my shell.
I think that's a great example for some students too that might not quite know what they want to do yet, or maybe they just entered the sport management program and they're like, I don't really know if this is for me or not. Like you just said, it was a different process for you, and it clearly has worked out in your favor. So did you work in athletics like when COVID happened here at CMU?
I was actually, so that was my first year of grad school. I got through up till March, and, we had heard about it. Hey, we went down to two of us in the office for one day at a time. And that first Monday after spring break, we were in till about noon, and then we got the call, and hey, everybody go home. COVID, we're shut down. We don't know. Which I got to say, to a point, it sucked not working, but for schoolwork, it was phenomenal, because I was able to sit at home, concentrate, and I knew I could just, hey, I don't have to work. I can knock out schoolwork. So I did so much better during COVID, which I know a lot of people didn't, but for me, that was such a, bright light for me of going, all right, well, I got nothing else to do. So I guess let's do this paper. So
what was it like coming back from COVID, like getting back into the swing of athletics after taking that large a break? And obviously there was, mask mandates and fans and everything. So what was that process like?
It was challenging, because we had like these misters that were on a backpack. So me and my boss, Sean Beam at the time, we were going through cleaning the weight room. Football was in the process of building their champion center, so they were in trailers outside. So we had to go in every day, hose those down, hose down the weight room, hose down basically anything that anybody touched, we had to do while wearing these masks. And then we had to put in, signs and stuff saying, hey, you cannot enter this facility without masks. We were stamping people. We were taking their temperatures as they were coming in. We had a whole process, and obviously, some people were okay with it, others weren't. So it was kind of that learning curve of, hey, you can't appease everybody, but, we got to just follow what we're told, and, give them some kind of, I don't want to say an ultimatum, but, hey, if you don't want to be here for this game, well, we can either refund you your ticket, or we can figure something out. Just because, again, at the time, even though we were out of COVID, we weren't really out. So we just never knew at any point. And especially for our facility staff, we were extra cautious, because there was only 4 of us. So we're like, if one of us gets it, the other 3 have to go on quarantine, because we're together all the time. And now athletics is going to suffer, because who's going to set up, who's going to tear down, who's going to do all this. So as close as we were very cautious of what we were doing. And we just did what we had to do to get through it.
Those are some scary times. I'm really happy that we're out of that now. So obviously, like we've talked about, you were a student in the program and in the grad program as well, like during this time. So what was the process like of, once you graduated, like turning that into a career? Because obviously you still work in the athletics program with CMU.
Yeah. So I think I kind of got lucky. I feel most of my athletics career has kind of just been very lucky, and I've been dealt a good hand. Even when I have a bad hand, somehow I come out on top. Um, Before grad school, I was actually in Indianapolis with our Sport Management Association. We were visiting USA Track and Field and a few other places there with the Colts and some other people. And I got a call from my boss asking if I wanted the grad assistantship. Well, of course I did. I wanted to go to grad school, go from there. And then while I was in grad school, obviously with COVID, that took a hit, but I was still able to connect with some people from undergrad, because when I was in undergrad, my senior year, me and a few people from SMA and a couple of my buddies, we took it upon ourselves to go outside of CMU, go to other schools that you probably wouldn't necessarily have the opportunity to go visit. So we went to Ohio State, the University of Tennessee, and Notre Dame, and just sat down with them. We reached out to them weeks prior on non-football weeks and said, "Hey, we're visiting. We want to chat with everybody that we could." And we got lucky that we were able to tour facilities, and we made connections with some people. And I'm still very close with a lot of those people. And one of those connections in particular helped me in grad school. I was applying for the NCAA Emerging Leaders Seminar, and I reached out to her and I said, "Hey, there's a section on here where I need to put down, a mentor and some people's names that have helped me or that can kind of vouch for me." And she said, "Yeah, absolutely. Put my name down. And if they call me, I will give them everything I can for you." And I got lucky that
That's awesome.
the first year of the Emerging Leaders Seminar that went virtual because of COVID, I got in on that. So it was myself and 311 people from across the country, from all different levels, jobs, coaching. So I mean, I think that helped me out, having that on my resume. But once I graduated, again, I got lucky. I was looking for jobs, and in, I think, August, early September, I actually turned down a job at George Washington University. And probably 2 hours later, my boss, Sean, calls me and says, "Hey, what are you up to? Are you still in town? Have you found a job?" And I said, "No, I actually just turned down a job." And he goes, "Perfect. I need you. So if you want a job, come back to CMU." I mean, I'm still living in town, so I didn't have to go far. So I got lucky on that, and I was on a contract for 9 months. Our associate AD and our assistant AD had just left, so it really was just
worked out. Yeah.
So did that for 9 months, and then I basically repeated the process. Quentin, who I know you had on a week or so ago, he took over after I left. He was our GA, took over for me. Then he took the job at Safe Management in Arizona. I got the call again, and I've been here ever since. And then this past May, I didn't have to deal with the contract anymore. I got the official full-time, so I don't have to keep doing yearly contracts. But,
nice.
Again, I just got lucky. That's really what it is. I don't think I know I have the skills and the technical ability to do it, but again, I think sometimes in life and in work, you just get lucky. And so far, I've just been lucky.
That's a great story, honestly. So are you from close to, or like from Michigan?
I'm from Michigan. I'm from Redford, Michigan. So I'm just outside of Detroit.
Okay.
I'm at Redford Union High School, so about 2 hours from here.
So when you were in the program, were you always like planning on like trying to go maybe out of state or somewhere back down towards southern Michigan, or did it just kind of whatever happens?
I think it was more whatever happens. I've always had and always will have, a kind of a rotation of, 5 to 8 schools that I'm like, hey, if they call or if they have a job, we're applying for it. And I was looking for jobs. I applied at some of the jobs at the schools I wanted to go to. Didn't work out. I've been finalists at, really big schools and really good jobs. Just hasn't worked out, but CMU's always been home. So again, I kind of got lucky. I would like to kind of go back towards home, either work at Michigan State, whatever that plays out, or, anywhere really. I'm happy to go anywhere. And I think that's kind of the attitude you kind of need, at least I have, and I think a lot of people probably should have in athletics, is it's not always going to work out your way. You kind of just have to be super flexible and be able to just, shrug your shoulders and say, all right, what's next? Because you just never know. At any point, somebody can call you, somebody can email you and say, hey, we have something for you. Are you interested? So it's just being flexible and kind of that whole bend, don't break attitude.
Yeah. We had a panel in Jen Eaton's class that we were on, and she had a bunch of former students that kind of talked about their experiences, and a lot of them have just, worked several different jobs already in the sport industry. So it's a lot of change that happens throughout this industry. So in CMU Athletics, like what would you say is your favorite part about doing event operations here?
I think my favorite part is just the different events. I mean, obviously you have your standard, sports and events, but then, sometimes you get tied into university events like powwow or graduation. This past year we had MHSAA cheer, which I'd never done. Phenomenal to do. And again, some of those special events, the MAC conference championships and some of the other things that you don't always have that chance to host or be a chance to be a part of. You know, you can't take it for granted because you just never know when those opportunities will come back. So as hard as it is to do some of those events and the hours that you put in and how mentally draining it is on top of physically draining, once it's over and you can kind of sit back and relax and just think about what you just did, you can really appreciate it. And I've kind of gotten into that point of my life of just appreciating those small things, the events, the interactions I have with people, the fans, my coworkers. It's, again, you can't take it for granted because at any point they could all take jobs. These events can come and go find different venues. So you may not see a lot of these things or people anymore past a certain point. So it's really just appreciate what you have the ability to do.
Right. Do you have like a favorite sport that you do events? Like, is there a favorite sport that you enjoy putting on?
I don't know if I have a favorite sport. I'm a game admin for field hockey right now, as well as women's basketball, gymnastics, and softball. So they all kind of have a place in my heart because I love doing it. Field hockey is, I don't want to say the easiest, right? Because there's no easy sport, but
right.
The field's already there. There's not much to do. And I never saw field hockey growing up in, Metro Detroit.
Right.
Hockey isn't just something people do. So coming up here and learning that as a GA, that was my first sport I had. And even as a student worker, kind of doing ball shagging and stuff like that, seeing that happen, it's a great sport to learn. I've known gymnastics, women's basketball, softball, they're similar. I've played baseball my whole life. So a lot of those I'm very familiar with, but seeing certain sports and again, being able to interact with these coaches and the girls and this, the roster and being able to know that you can help them out. I can't say I have a favorite sport because to me, they're all kind of my favorites because I interact with them so much.
I just did PA for the field hockey game the other day for the multimedia team. And I'm right there with you with field hockey. I just have not, I don't know it as well as obviously the people that play it, but it's nice to learn that sport. And I think that is a great part about working in athletics because you get to learn about sports that you don't necessarily know too much about.
Absolutely.
So we talked about, your favorite parts about working in athletics. Let's go to the other side. What are some of the biggest challenges that you face in your current position?
I think for me, it's just the unknown. Every day, as you're getting into athletics, no day is ever the same. This isn't a 9-to-5 office job where I know, hey, I'm going to go in, I'm going to do emails, I can plan out my whole day. In my head, I can plan out my whole day and say, okay, hey, I'm going to do this today, I'm going to do this today, I'm going to eat lunch, and I'm going to do this, that, and the third. And by 9 o'clock, it's flipped on its head. Maybe you still get lunch, but it's later. But, I think the challenging part is really all the moving pieces because especially in my job, you have to talk to and interact with so many people, so many teams, across campus partners. You try to make everybody happy, which obviously is nearly impossible to do. But you just try to balance it the best you can and make sure that teams are understanding of situations. You give them information as you get it to, whether that's they need to not be in a gym that day, they can't practice that day because there's some maintenance going on, whatever it is. It's really just a huge communication thing. And obviously communication can get blurred as you pass it along. So for me, the challenge is making sure everybody's on the same page and that we're working together. But at the same time, it's rewarding in the fact that I know when I do it and I can get it done, it gets done. Teams are appreciative, makes my job easier. And then they also appreciate me helping them out, which obviously makes me appreciate them because they're understanding. So,
yeah. So when, obviously event operations and game days on a non-game day or a non-day when there's not an event going on, what does that typically look like for you? Is it just a lot of communicating with people and setting things up?
Yeah, it really just depends. I mean, so I can use field hockey, for example, on Sunday. So Monday I'll come in, I'll have my game contracts for my officials. I'll turn those in. I'll double check with everybody that we're good. Our officials I know we won't have a home game past that point, but then I'll reach out to our coaches, say, hey, I know you guys are practicing. Is there anything different? Do you want me to water the field at different times? So really it's just communicating, kind of planning out part of the week. And mostly Monday morning, I get in at 8 a.m. before most people are here. I look through the calendar for the week. I put it on my board of what events are coming up, what times, what do we need to do, and then I kind of just can cross those off as I do it. I put tasks on my board. I have a notebook that I also say, hey, you need to do this, this, and this today. Make sure I hit at least some of those, depending on it depends on how much I need to get that done.
Right. Yeah.
I usually keep everything's in sections of 1 to 4 of very important to, hey, you can wait a little bit on these.
Okay, I like that.
I try not to have too many, hey, you need to get done today's. So those are always the first things I hit. So, it varies, but I would say Mondays for me are usually like non-game days or office days or prepping for the next game day, because there's never too many office days in between the next game. So a lot of it is prepping for what's next. So if I'm lucky enough to sit in my office, it's catching up on emails, it's getting stuff ahead. So in the coming weeks, when I don't have those office days, I already have it pre-planned, ready to go. It takes me 5 minutes to print something out, get it ready, get with the officials, do towels, whatever I need to do, and take care of it.
Yeah. And, like you kind of mentioned earlier, like this time of year is one of the chiller times of the year, obviously, before it gets going in the winter time. Is there like a sport that is like the most hectic sport to put on?
I wouldn't say hectic, but gymnastics is probably outside of football, because obviously football is like all hands on deck.
It's like its own thing, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of its own realm, but gymnastics is also all hands on deck for us. It usually takes about 4 hours the first time we do it, and we can get it down to about a little under 3 hours to set up and tear down, just because there's so many moving parts, with all the people we need, the equipment that we have to move. So I would say that's hectic, but the actual event itself isn't that hectic, because I don't want to say we're able to relax and chill out and let it run itself, but it's a little more laid back that we can allow them to do it. But then as soon as it's done, it's, hey, clean the mats, get this done, get these flipped, ready to go, get this out so we can all go home. I would say those are probably the most hectic, but in terms of the actual game for me, I'd maybe say like basketballs, just because, again, for me, I'm either running replay, scoreboard, I'm walking around the arena, depending if we have those covered or not. And, there's so many things and variables that happen just in any sport, but basketball especially. You have spills everywhere. You get custodial calls. You're calling everybody and their brother trying to figure something out. Nobody's answering their phone. Nobody's answering their walkie. So I would say that's probably the most hectic, but again, every sport has its own, difficulties. So it's hard to say which one's harder. It really just depends on the day and, if everyone's deciding that we're going to cooperate and communicate that day, or if we're going to be difficult. So it just depends on, but I would probably say the basketballs are probably actually the most hectic on game day.
Kind of sounds like just whatever sport something goes wrong in ends up being the most hectic
Basically.
one. So, yeah. So you mentioned like communication is like a main part of your job, like having to talk to several different people all day long, basically, especially on game days. What are some other skills that you would say are like definitely needed to have in your position?
First and foremost, I would say time management. I mean, especially for us, when we have to set up a sport at a certain time and it needs to be completed and ready to go at a certain time. I can use field hockey for an example. Field's got to be ready 70 minutes prior. That means goals are out, field's watered, everything is good to go, that if they wanted to play right at that second, we can do it. Time management, again, obviously, most important. Communication, obviously. But also, I would just say your interpersonal communication skills among people, because, you're talking to everybody all day. And I know it, again, ties in with communication, but it's your people skills. You need to be able to talk to you. As I'm talking to you, you have a problem. Okay, how can I talk to you? I have another person who has a problem who, if I'm talking to them in a certain tone, they may not receive it as well. So I have to read body language. I have to be able to understand them and get to, the base of the problem without trying to make them feel that I'm not listening to them and that I'm just kind of brushing them off. So you really become, I don't want to say like a therapist, but I mean, kind of, you have
In
to,
a way you are, yeah.
yeah, I have to read people's facial expressions, their body language, and I have to understand the questions they're asking me or their tone they're coming at me with. I got to understand how to, react to it and make sure that I can get that situation squared away and they feel heard. And then, if I need to, going that extra step and walking them to the ticket office or showing them to their seats, or if they need something like, hey, don't worry, ma'am, I'll grab this towel. I can get a custodian. Don't worry. Let me give the call and I'll stay here and wait for you. Whatever it is, you just need to be able to talk to so many different people and so many different personalities, and that's not even including your coaches, your referees, the people who do, your like your scoreboards and all this, and the players and the staff and the fans. So I mean, there's a lot of moving parts, and then you got students coming in that are going to class. So it becomes a merry-go-round of
Yeah.
who and what you need to do. But I mean, it's hard to nail down just a couple skills that you
right
need, because as you kind of come along and as you start going in whatever career you want, whether that's event ops or fundraising, broadcasting, multimedia, etc., communication, you really become good at finding your 5 tools and expanding on those and saying like, hey, I can't just be good at showing up on time. I got to be good at this, and this. So there's so many that it really becomes a learning experience of learning the skills that you're really good at, and then learning the skills that you're okay at, and spending time getting better at those okay skills while still working on those skills you're really good at, so you become well-rounded in everything that you need. So when somebody asks you the most random out of left field question, you're somewhat prepared for it and say, oh yeah, I've done that before, yes, I can do this. You have at least somewhat of a solution, or somebody who knows the solution.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like personal development is definitely a very important thing, then trying to continue to grow as a person and be able to develop those skills throughout your career. So I guess the last thing that I have for you is, you kind of just went into this basically with the skills, but do you have any other advice to current sport management students that potentially want to go into facilities and have a position like yours?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, if you guys want to join us, we're happy. Me and my other director, Jack have talked about this. We want people to join us, even if they don't know what they want to do. We've had engineers, we've had people who want to go into creative writing, and we've had so many different students and people and the careers they want. A lot of them aren't even close to athletics, but we're giving them, skills that they may use eventually. And even some people have worked with us and gone into communications or gone into ticket sales. And we're okay with it. We want you to be able to come in and say, hey, you know what? Facilities isn't for me. Events isn't for me, because me and Jack have talked about it and we're so happy to do it. If they figure out what they want to do, if they are, deciding, hey, I want to do fundraising, well, we know those people. We can put you in
Right. Yeah.
right at their door. We can give them good words for you and make sure that you're in a good spot. And if they have questions for, us about them, we can answer them and say, yes, like, this is what they want to do. They worked really hard. This just wasn't for them. And outside of that too, I would say take a shot. I mean, I like I mentioned earlier, we went on those trips to Tennessee and Notre Dame and Ohio State, and I got to see some really cool stuff that I probably wouldn't have seen on a normal tour. And I got to tour those campuses and go out to lunches at like local spots that they all enjoy. And I've talked with some of these people who, let's say Ohio State, for example. I talked with an athletic trainer, well, we did, for 45 minutes, and none of us expected that conversation to go that well, that we were like, yes, like, this is a good conversation. We thought, oh, it's athletic training, like, not that their job's boring, but none of us were in athletic training, so we're like, we won't connect with him. And we ended up connecting so well, and we ended up seeing him as we were leaving, had another like 20-minute conversation past that. And again, it's, you'll hear it through the rest of your life, and you've heard it before. It's, not what you know, or it's who you know, but really it's who knows you. Because I can say, hey, I know Michael Alford, the Florida State AD that used to be here at CMU. I can say that, but if somebody asks him, hey, do you know Justin Faur? And he says, oh, yes, I do. Well, then there's some validity into what I
Right.
said. So I would say just take a chance. I mean, a lot of people now across athletics are open. It's not so much closed as I'm sure it used to be. And a lot of people have those shared experiences of doing the internships and feeling kind of underpaid and undervalued, but then you get into a spot where you want to give back. And, when people reach out and say, hey, I want to interview for this, I want to do this, or do you know who I can talk to? It's like, yes, like come in, we can help you out. Hey, talk to so-and-so. And I think that's going to be for most people, not even just at CMU. So for me, it's just take a shot. I mean, worst case they say is no. And
Yeah.
you would have gotten that response anyways had you not tried. So the worst thing you can do is just not trying. And you never know. You might shock yourself into figuring out that reaching out to somebody was really the best thing you could have ever done. And it got you an opportunity that maybe you wouldn't have gotten, and it helps propel your career.
Yeah, that's like the big thing that I've learned so far as a student is just like building connections and relationships with people is like the number one thing that basically everyone says to students is, that is the most important thing. And me being able to do this podcast has helped out a lot with that, building connections with people in the industry as well. So that's basically all I have for you. Is there anything else that you can think of that I haven't asked that you kind of feel is important, or is that about it?
I think you've nailed everything basically on the head. I mean, I've kind of kept track of the podcasts that you've been doing and the people you've done it with. So I think you've done a phenomenal job of it so far. And
thank you.
I would say for you specifically, just keep doing this. I think you're doing great at it. You're helping promote the sport management program, and being able to talk to alumni or Jen, Dr. B. I think it gives you obviously again a leg up, and again, you're helping out the sport management department. You're helping out yourself. So I think, again, just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, it's a win-win for everybody. So
absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Justin. And thank you guys for listening to episode 4 of the CMU Sport Management Podcast.
Thank you, Kyle.